Welcome back to the Legend of Zelda. Last time we took on dungeons, well, one dungeon, Dungeon 6. I'm used to taking out multiple dungeons in one video. But we just did Dungeon 6 because it's a horrible dungeon and I don't like it. It's my least favorite. But now we're going to some of my favorite dungeons in the game. Both Dungeons 7 and 8 are ones that I really like, although for kind of different reasons. Dungeon 7 is the demon, I think. Dungeon 6, I don't remember if I said the name of that one. That one was the dragon, which honestly I couldn't really tell by the map. And this one you can't really tell by the map either that it's a demon. It's a pretty generic looking thing, but I'll save that for when we actually get the map. You might notice that I have a lot more rupees than what I ended the last part on. I wanted to grind up some, so I went to do a gambling minigame. There's one, I think it's down one screen, to the right 2 screens, down 1 screen, to the right 2 screens again, and then down 1 more screen. And it's right next to where you start off the game, before you get the sword. So, just to the left of that screen. The reason I got so many rupees was because there's actually another one of those old men here that likes to... Well, I'm not sure if he likes to, but he will upgrade your bombs. So rather than just 12, we can have 16, even though 12 is a pretty good number. I'm gonna be running out of bombs soon enough anyway, so it's a good thing to have because it does refill your bombs. Dungeon 7 is pretty easy, and that's kind of why I like it. It's late in the game, but it makes you feel pretty strong. You have blue Gorias among some scarce red ones. The red ones will go down in 1 hit, and the blue ones go down in 2 with the magical sword. There's also some ropes around, some keys, all easy enemies that can be taken out in 1 hit. And a bunch of dig doggers. I think there's like 3 dig doggers in this dungeon, which is weird, but whatever. So yeah, this dungeon is a pretty easy one, and that's why I like it. It's kind of a power trip thing for me. Like, I'm so strong now that I like to blast through this dungeon. That's the best way to describe it, really. And of course, last enemy drops the stopwatch as usual. Anyway, the boss of this dungeon does leave me on a kind of sour note, I guess. We'll get to that when we get to that, but for the most part, the dungeon, I like it. I like the labyrinthine nature of it. There's a lot of bombable walls around. There's a lot of rooms that you don't need to actually go into, which isn't something that a lot of modern Zelda games have. Extra rooms that don't really necessitate you going into them because they don't have like a key or anything like that. And I did not get stuck there for the reasons you might think I did. I was trying to press down, but I guess I was rolling my thumb over the control pad too fast, so I kind of like pressed down and left at the same time, and it didn't register me as actually going down, so I ended up just walking in place for a little bit. I blame the controller. Maybe, maybe it's my fault, I don't know. The blaming the controller thing was actually a joke. I'm not one to blame controllers for the most part, unless I'm maybe playing one of the CDI games, which I actually never played. I know they're not any good, and I don't plan on playing them. The only Zelda games I want to play are ones on the timeline, and of course, some of the non-timeline ones, like, I don't know, Hyrule Warriors, it's not on the timeline. I don't want to say Breath of the Wild is not on the timeline, because I'm not sure what to believe at this point with Breath of the Wild. We just got the upgrade for the bombs again. We can carry 16 now, And I can finally kill this last Dodongo for no reason, because it's not actually going to drop anything but rupees. A lot of rooms in this dungeon actually do that. They only have rupees in them, which is good because, you know, there's 100 rupees that you could spend right there, but it's not all that useful. Then again, there's not really much they can give you that's very useful at this point. Like, the dungeon map, there's only one of those, so it's understandable that it can't be there. Bombs are in plenty of rooms as well, so I don't know if you want more of them. Maybe if you're a little too gung-ho with bombs. And keys, you don't really need that many in this dungeon. I think this is actually a dungeon where there's more locked doors than keys. But this is also a dungeon where not every room is mandatory, just like most of the dungeons, and not every door that you need to unlock, well, is needed to go through in order to progress. Like, there's some areas where you could just bomb a hole in the room above, and then bomb a hole in the room, like, to the right of it to get into a room that was actually blocked by a locked door last time you looked. It's a weird way of describing things. Just, there's ways to avoid using keys in this dungeon is all I'm trying to say. A thing that I didn't really notice until I played through the game this time was that if you do end up using all your bombs, the B button defaults back to the boomerang. So you don't have to go into the menu in order to equip the boomerang, but it's also not an item that I kind of want to use this late in the game. I'd rather use the magic rod, I guess. And here's another dig dogger. This time it splits into 3 rather than just being one smaller dig dogger, but they're still pretty easy to take out. 2 swings from the magical sword, or 2 stabs. And of course I try the bomb trick as many times as I can because, you know, there's a lot of bombs. I'm not sure if I actually get it right though. The way the trick is supposed to work is you plant a bomb essentially on dig dogger, play the whistle, he turns into the smaller ones, and the smaller ones are actually vulnerable to bombs, so then you can actually kill them with only 1 hit from the magical sword, because the bomb does as much damage as the magical sword. But I'm not sure if I get that right at any point in this game. There was the Grumble Grumble guy. It was a Goriah who wanted some of your meat, or bait, or whatever it's called. I got the bait a lot earlier in the game, like before the first dungeon, I think. So, I had it on me. And that's really its only use in the game. I think I've heard that it can be used to lure enemies. Say, if you wanna, I don't know, get a bunch of Octoroks into one place, you place the bait, and then maybe place a bomb on top of the bait, and then they all gather near it, and they all explode and drop some stuff for you. Maybe, I don't know. I don't really use it for combat. The only reason I really use it is to get through this part of the dungeon, because you can't actually pass unless you have the bait, which is pretty vague and not all that good. Like, that's a pretty guide dang it moment in the game. Not easy to know that you'll actually need the bait. He could be saying grumble grumble because he's angry or something. I think it's supposed to be his stomach growling. They could have fixed that in the translation. Just say like, oh, I'm hungry, or I want some meat or something like that. But no, they left it as it was. And it is kind of funny, I guess. It's kind of reached a bit of meme status, like bomb Dodongos, or Dodongos dislike smoke, or it's dangerous to go alone, I guess, or buy something, will ya? I'm not sure if all of those are actually memes. They are to me, alright. Jeez, that's a lot of slowdown. There was another room with a lot of slowdown in this dungeon, one with a bunch of Stalfos in it, but that's because there were like 7 in a room that didn't need to have 7 Stalfos. In this one, there's like fireballs going everywhere. There's 4 Goriahs throwing magical boomerangs all over the place, and then there's me trying to get as much use out of the magic rod as I can, and just kind of spamming the magic rod, which means making projectiles on screen, which means having more things on screen, which means slowing down some more. We're pretty close to the end of the dungeon. We're in the eye of the demon, I guess. I didn't really talk about it once we got the map, but that's supposed to look like a demon. I don't see it. I see a face, and I can see an open mouth, but I don't see any demon. It looks like the head of, I don't know, a lizard or something? Some kind of amphibian? I don't know. Either way, we got the red candle, which, despite blue fire being like hotter than red fire, it isn't as good. The red candle makes it so that you can shoot as many fireballs as you want. They're not really fireballs, but you can just spam the button, essentially. There's no one use per room limit like with the blue candle. You can use it as much as you want, although I think only 2 bits of fire can be on screen at once, so once there are 2, you're kind of stuck for a little bit. But if you want to do some damage, or if you just like fire for some reason, then the red candle's for you. And that's the dungeon item. Just an upgrade to the candle, which is a little lame, I guess. It's not all that great. I don't really use the candle for anything but lighting up rooms, which only takes 1 fireball to do, but whatever. If you want to use it, you use it. And here's the 3rd dig dogger in this dungeon. Also splits into 3, also easy to beat. If I could just kill it now, thank you. And up here's some of the dongos that we don't need to kill. You can't just bomb the wall to the right, but I just like killing the dongos. And not this way. Like, I don't like doing it this way where I have to put the bombs in the dongos' mouths. I want to kill them via putting the bombs near them, having it explode on them, and then stabbing them with my sword, because it's more bomb efficient and also more fun for some reason. But I just couldn't do it. Also, the dongos can somehow walk over the statues that spew fireballs at you. I don't know why they can do that, but they can. And I went backwards for no reason. I have to bomb the wall. There we go. This next room essentially leads to a path that can get you to the boss of the dungeon. Sadly, there are wall masters or floor masters, whichever, in this room, and dealing with them is a bit of a pain, because you can't use your sword in this room, for the most part, because of the bubbles. So I use my magic rod for the most part, and it also has the range, which is neat. But then there's this one wall master that gets me, and here's what it does. It takes you all the way back to the beginning of the dungeon, which is lame, so I'm just going to use my super duper editing powers to speed us up on the way to the dungeon's end. Dungeon's end. That's what I was trying to say just then. Anyway, in terms of completion for this game, since there's not really much to talk about for the next 15 seconds, we're pretty close to done. We've done all the gathering in the overworld, all the heart containers, all the weapons and stuff. We just need the heart containers from the next couple of bosses, and we'll be a pretty pimped out Link. Although there is another item that well, there are a couple items that we're missing, but those are inside of dungeons, and they're kind of the dungeon items, so I don't really count them. Then again, they're not mandatory, so I guess they could count. After killing all of the wall masters in this dungeon, you push this block, and a staircase appears that has a pathway rather than an item in it. We take this path all the way to the other side, which isn't that far away. And here's where we end up. right below the eye of the demon's face. Where else would an eye be, I guess? And this room looks like there's no way to get out of it. We're just kind of stuck here. You actually can't push the block in order to take the staircase again, but what you're supposed to do in order to get to the Triforce is blow up this wall and face off with the boss of this dungeon. Another reused one, it's Aquamentus. And it goes down in 2 hits from the magical sword. Really lame boss. That's like the one thing I don't like in this dungeon. Like, I'm okay with the wall masters taking me back to the beginning because this isn't a hard dungeon to begin with, so I can just blaze a trail all the way back to the end, or back to where the wall masters were, rather. But having Aquamentus at the end and not even buffing him up, like, he still has the same amount of health as he did in the first dungeon. So he's still super weak. That's so lame. Like, maybe if he had more hits, or maybe if there were like 2 Aquamentuses that you had to fight, that would have been cool. Or maybe like Aquamentus and another boss or something. But that's a little too much. Like, you don't want to fight an Aquamentus and like a 3-headed Gleeok or something like that. Damn, these are some weird names. Well, no matter which way you go about it, we're on our way to Dungeon 8 now. And I went the wrong way. Whoops. I guess I could kill a tech type and not even grab the money. Well, I'm kind of done spending money anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But Dungeon 8 is kind of hidden. Similarly to Dungeon 7, I guess, in that it's not really in a place that looks like a dungeon. Because like Dungeons 1 through 6, they have what look like gaping mouths and 2 kind of things near them. Like, I don't know what to call them. Just structures. 2 structures on either side of them, along with an enemy nearby. And Dungeon 7 also kind of has something like that. It has the fountain thing going on with a moblin nearby. And there's also the hint in order to get to the dungeon, but Dungeon 8 doesn't have a hint. It's this bush right here. It's not super hidden though, because honestly when I was playing pretty recently, maybe a couple of years ago, on the 3DS Virtual Console version of this game, I found this dungeon probably 3rd of all the dungeons. I didn't do it 3rd, I did it like 6th or 7th because I wanted to save Dungeon 6 for the end and I couldn't find Dungeon 2 for the life of me. But it's not hard to find. You'd probably burn it on your way to another dungeon or to an item that you're looking for because, you know, that bush is in your way, so you might as well get it out the way, and the blue candle's not that expensive. Anyway, Dungeon 8, this is the Lion Dungeon, and it's another pretty fun one, although in a different way to Dungeon 7. Dungeon 7 I thought was fun because it was easy, but it made you feel good, except for the boss. This one is hard, and it makes you feel good, because there's a lot of, you know, bunches of enemies that kind of work together in order to take down the not green clad hero, because not actually wearing green anymore. Like this room that we were just in as I'm going down these stairs, there were bubbles, there were Darknuts, both blue and red, and there were Gibdos. At least I'm pretty sure those were Gibdos. And it was not too difficult. It was pretty easy. The Darknuts can kind of get in the way, but the bubbles can take... How should I put this? The bubbles take away your sword temporarily, making for a decent challenge. You can still use the magic rod, which does less damage when it functions as a sword. Does less damage in general, actually. But, it's not your shield getting taken away when there's a bunch of Wizzrobes. and the only way to damage Wizzrobes is with your sword or bombs, which are, you know, perishable items. So I find it good. It's like 3 layers compared to the 6 layers of fighting Wizzrobes. And also there were, you know, likes which would take away your shield permanently, which was also very lame in Dungeon 6. Let's not talk about that horrible dungeon anymore. This is Dungeon 8, the dungeon full of man handlers instead of dig doggers. But man handlers, we fought a bunch of them. They're pretty easy to beat. Place a bomb in their center to eradicate most of the heads. And I missed one this time, but that's okay. And this dungeon's another pretty big one, like 7. And a pretty vague one, labyrinthine. You need to bomb a bunch of holes in order to get to places you want to go. Which I'm totally okay with, but then again, I kind of have a lot of this game memorized, so... You know, if you're a first-time player, you're probably not going to be okay with the fact that you need to bomb a lot of places, and it's going to act like trial and error. By the way, we got a dungeon item very early on, after beating that first man handler and, the first room with Darknuts, Gibdos, and Bubbles. We got the Book of Magic, which I think was actually called the Bible in the Japanese version, but Nintendo of America was like, no religious stuff in our games. So it became the Book of Magic, and that's what I'm going to call it, even though it does have a cross on it. It's a kind of upgrade to your magic rod, making the shockwaves turn to fireballs once they hit whatever target they're going after, so it can do some lingering damage, which is neat, but not all that great. It doesn't do any extra damage or anything like that. It can light up rooms, like the candle can, which is pretty cool. And I guess a downside to it is that the fireballs still can hurt you, so say, you know, you got hurt, well, not got hurt by a bubble, but got cursed by a bubble, so you couldn't use your sword for a little bit, but you want to use your wand as a substitute for the sword. You're probably going to be taking some damage because you're so close to the enemy and the fire that's going to spawn from the wand. And sometimes you may even shoot a fireball right at the exit of a room, so you have to wait a little bit before you can leave, which is, you know, more a problem on my part. Unlike the candle, which you can only have 2 fireballs on screen and then, like, can't use any more until the fireballs are gone, you can actually use more of the magic rod while they are still fireballs on screen, but it won't produce any more fireballs. So, you know, only shockwaves. Here's another Goma, very easy to take down, takes 3 arrows rather than the previous one which only took 1. Which is like, they did it for Goma, why couldn't they do it for Aquamentus? But whatever. There was something else that I wanted to say and I completely forgot about it. Shoot, I don't even remember. Oh, keys, that's what it was. It was actually about keys. There's a second dungeon item in this dungeon, and it kind of makes keys obsolete. So if you've been hoarding them this last, you know, 7 dungeons, you can use them all in this dungeon, and you probably will use a bunch of them in this dungeon because there's a lot of locked doors. And not have to worry because there's going to be an item that makes keys. No longer a problem. Although, you know, they kind of weren't a problem to begin with if you're using the mini NES or maybe some kind of virtual console thing, not any illegal stuff going on. But you can use restore points to cheat the gambling minigame and get as much money as you want and then buy as many keys as you want anyway. So that's a thing that you can do. Something that I was kind of testing in the manhandler room, you might have noticed that I stood still for a little bit in that room. I was wanting to see if manhandler's fireballs could bounce off your shield just like the regular ones, and they actually can't. They go through your shield, which is interesting. It's interesting. It's just, it's not all that useful information, because you could just be killing Manhandla in the time that it takes for you to see whether or not the fireballs hurt. And same with Goma. Goma's fireballs will go through your shield, which is lame-ish, but Goma is so easy and Manhandla is so easy that it's not really that big of a deal. And I'm kind of going the wrong way. I'm nearing the end of the dungeon rather than getting the second dungeon item, which is bad. It's bad me. But it's okay, because I guess I get to stay in this dungeon for a little longer. I do like the coloration, I guess, of this dungeon. It does make Link a little harder to see, I guess. Oh, I do not want to equip that. I need to use another magic potion, or medicine. Medicine of life. I think that's what it's called in this game. But I don't know, the white coloration just makes it very ominous looking. And I think, well, I'm like 100% sure the last dungeon also uses white as its color for the dungeon, and it kind of makes sense because of the shape of the last dungeon being what it is. Like, you think of that thing and you think white, so it makes sense, is all I'm trying to say. I should really stop talking about later dungeons, because right now we're dealing with this one, and I think this room is completely optional. The boss room was actually in, well, not the boss room, but the boss was right above the room that we just came out of, the one with all the Poles voices. You just bomb up and the boss is right there, and I think, well, no, it's not a Goma, it's a Gliok. I don't know why I thought Goma. Here's another old man saying that the 10th enemy has a bomb. Basically means every 10 enemies that you kill, if like the 10th one is like in the blue group, so if it's like a blue Octorok or maybe a Gibdo, it's gonna drop bombs. Maybe not every time, I'm not sure, but drops aren't as random in this game as you might think. According to that old man, at least. Like, you know, as I said, blue enemies, like blue Octoroks and Gibdos, are likely to drop bombs, and then something like Tektites are very likely to drop rupees, which is pretty good for grinding, especially near the gambling game that has Tektites near it. It's the one, again, right next to where you start off the game, because you could just kind of, if you need some extra rupees, farm off the Tektites and then play the gambling minigame in order to get a bunch more rupees. And I think this, well, to the right of this room is the dungeon item. I'm not sure if I'm going to be going to the right just this moment, though. Yes, I am. Of course, I have to actually, you know... Oh, never mind. It's to the right of this room. And we have another Goma to deal with. That's probably why I thought the boss of this place was going to be another Goma, because there's more than one. Like, this dungeon had 2 Gomas and 2 Manhandlers. Meanwhile, the previous dungeon had, like, 3 Digdoggers. So we're getting our fill of the bosses. Never say Nintendo doesn't make use of what they got, because they will shove it in your face and reuse it multiple times. I'm taking a lot of damage from this Goma. I just like walking back and forth at the bottom of the screen, because the fireballs will most likely hit your shield if you do that. You're either walking away from them, or you're running into them shield first, which is, of course, a good thing with the magical shield. And finally, I had a room where the stopwatch was actually useful. There were like 4 Darknuts left, and I only killed 1 at that point, so the stopwatch stopped 4 enemies. That was kind of a mess. this Darknut in here kind of seems impossible to kill. Just stand near this block and keep stabbing upward. And there it is. Another stopwatch when there's no enemies around. Here's the dungeon item. It looks like a key. And that's exactly what it is. And the top of the key is also kind of shaped like a lion. This is the magical key, or magic key. I don't know. This game just likes to use magic in its names a lot. You might notice there's an A next to our key count now. I'm not sure what the A exactly means, but we pretty much have infinite keys. Kinda odd that it's an A. You'd think it'd maybe be like a infinity sign or like a, I don't know, a U to signal unlimited or something. I don't know. Maybe it's because A in hexadecimal means like 10. So you think, oh, I have 10 keys because that's the number that comes after 9 in hexadecimal. But no. You have A amount of keys. It kind of sounds funny when you put it that way to me. It might mean like almighty or something like that. Like there's nothing that can be stopped by this. Or maybe that's just me thinking about Shin Megami Tensei and how the almighty element can't be stopped by anything because it's almighty. And we're back pretty much near the end of the dungeon. The room where you take the staircase to get to the end is like 2 screens below the room where you get the magical key. So, not that big of a trek. I kind of did go to extra rooms on my way up to the key, I guess. But coming back down, it's not long of a trip. Although I did go to this room by accident, and I should not have. Because there's a bunch of Darknuts here that I don't have to deal with. Because I could have just bombed up at the room I was previously in and gotten to the boss. But no, I am being a dumb. And do I not get the map in this dungeon? Well, the map is shaped like a lion. Maybe I'll put a picture of it right here. Show you what the map looks like. Yeah, the map looks like a lion. I can't believe I actually didn't get the map for this dungeon. That kind of leaves me a bit sour. I might have to re-enter it in the next part. You bomb here, open up this door, or break open this wall, and it's a 4-headed Gleeok. Gleeok heads still take 3 hits to take down, so just keep stabbing when you're on the right of them, and there you go, they're done. We have all 16 heart containers. I was about to say 18 for some reason. We have all the heart containers in the game, and we have all the pieces of the Triforce. So next time on the original Legend of Zelda, we're going to be heading into the final dungeon, Death Mountain, to take down Ganon, save Zelda and the world, and stuff.